Our chair for today's event, Amna Salim. Please welcome Jenny Colgan and Amna Salim.
Hello! I forgot my wine. I'll be 2 seconds. Amna will keep you going. Also, guys, I know it's horribly rainy and quiet. If you're at the back, do you want to move forward a little bit?
Everyone's very comfy. There'll be no audience participation in the way that
we're not going to pick on you or anything. It's just to have a cozy. Right, give me 2 seconds.
I've been flashing people all day because the button, so this button has come off and I was not aware, so I've just been sitting, like, I'm not going to flash, like this all day, and everyone can just see right up into...
That's kind of why I asked you to move down.
Yeah, that was it. You have to pay extra for that show, though. It is lovely to be here. So, as you know, this is Jenny Colgan. I'm sure you have read many of her books. And I did not know that you were also the winner of Celebrity Mastermind. So.
Oh, do you know what? I don't get, as you can probably tell by the fact that I'm just kind of ambling about looking up Amna's skirt, I don't really get nervous when I'm talking to folk or being on the radio or anything. The only time I have ever been nervous was Mastermind. And the reason for that was not that it was because every year on Mastermind there's always somebody that gets 0.
Oh no.
There's always one person who cannot answer a single question.
That would be me.
And they turn up on YouTube, they get, and they start to stutter and they kind of go, what's your name? And they go, oh, pass. And it was the one that I was so terrified.
You won by like 21 points or something.
Oh, I studied really, really hard. And then totally pretended I didn't.
No.
But as soon as I'd answered one question, I was like, I don't need to win. I've already lost. I lost Celebrity Pointless twice and I lost Celebrity the Chase. You can tell they're getting really desperate for celebrities by the time they get around to me. So I didn't need to win. I just needed to not get 0. And my specialist subject was the Manhattan Project.
Oh, really?
And I'm going to watch the shit out of Oppenheimer and then complain about it. So that was kind of scary too, because I was just like, oh, well, how could a girl that writes rom-com like science? So
I know, how could that possibly
How could that possibly? Oh my God, I might even watch Barbie as well. Yeah,
more than
I know.
one thing. Because you also write sci-fi.
Yes.
So you're multifaceted as a human being, surprise, surprise.
Amazing.
We're very shocked over
But that was the most frightened I have ever been. I was on a very expensive train to Manchester by the toilets, having oh
my gosh.
Really scary. And then also, one of the other people that was on it was bloody Stanley Bloody Johnson, who I couldn't, looking at him, like, I just couldn't like chill with the lovely other contestants because it was Stanley Johnson. Might punch me in the face.
That's so unfortunate, though. And also, they really are, like, if the terms for celebrity is Boris Johnson's father.
Quite broad.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, he gives me the creeps. So, get back to the book, I guess. So, Jenny has released The Summer Skies. I didn't read it because I listened to it. And I had, what was it, what was her name?
It's Ailey Beaton.
Ailey Beaton.
And Beaton's my real name. Beaton's my actual name. What happens with audiobooks is they send you through actors' audition tapes to listen to. So you can listen to a bit and then you go, that one. And I could never bear to do that because life as an actor is really hard, and I just...
You're like, I'm going to hurt their feelings.
I couldn't bear it, and I was always like, no, whoever you think is fine. There's, Ailey Beaton, she sounds fine because she had the same name as me. And you know what? I don't listen to them because all I can hear is stuff I would have written slightly differently. But people love her.
Well, I do.
Absolutely just love her. So if you're in the mood for an audiobook, and that's kind of nice because we can never change her now, because I love audiobooks, but if they change the reader in the middle of a series, I fall out with it really badly.
It's like in TV shows when they recast someone and expect you to not notice, and you're just like, I have eyes.
Do you know they did it for Wolf Hall? The reader of the first Wolf Hall, and then for Bring Up the Bodies, they changed it to Ben Miles. No diss to Ben Miles, but
Yeah, it's what you're used to. I was listening to it, and every so often on Audible you can kind of add a note to every session. So I wish I had my phone here, because if you went through my notes on every kind of part that I had to stop and write something, it was just like, oh, this guy again, because Hayden was really annoying me.
You're meant to quite like him.
In some aspects, I think I related too hard to the fact that I had a similar ex-boyfriend who couldn't deal, my success was great for him to gain his own success instead of just being there for me and appreciating it. So I think maybe I just related too hard in that aspect. I don't know if I've just spoiled the whole thing for you. But in general, and I really loved the next book. Can you write more about the brother? Because I love their relationship and all the undertones to it, and clearly he has a wee bit of a chip on his shoulder and she's overcompensating, and I was just like, huh.
To give you a quick setup, Morag is from a piloting family from up north, where they have those really little planes, that hop onto the beach at Barra and stuff like that. And those planes have always been not just tourist planes, although they do that a lot, but they're kind of a lifeline. They take out pregnant women, they'll bring your sheep if you need your sheep. They're much more like a rural bus service where you know who's taking you back and forward all the time. And so that was kind of where it came from. Morag is from a piloting background. Her brother never had any interest in it, but she did, and she's gone off to pilot bigger and bigger planes.
In this male-dominated industry as well. So what made you choose that particular occupation?
Well, one of my sons dragged me repeatedly to the Museum of Aviation out in East Lothian. If you haven't been, by the way, it's fantastic. They've got a Concorde you can sit on. Have you been?
Not yet.
It's really good. You should go. Meanwhile, by the way, one of my other kids is just like, oh, this is the most boring nerd thing ever, which is kind of the definition of having more than one kid. But what I really got there was a sense of how, which I didn't know, was how much pilots really love their jobs. They love their jobs. A bit like if you've ever met a train driver, they love driving trains. They just love it. And that, I think, is much. And then they had a display of those little those little puddle jump planes with a female pilot. And I thought, it just sparked something. I thought, that is interesting. And then I went and talked to some pilots and learned, right, think about your job, right? If you're ever talking about your job to young people who don't have any idea of what your job is, it's really difficult to explain to them without using jargon or without a certain assumption. So if somebody came to me and asked about my job, and I could say, well, you have an agent, you'll probably have a domestic agent, and then you'll have someone that handles your foreign, and what they'll do is they'll handle your contracts. And none of these words would mean anything to a 14-year-old. That was me with the pilot.
Yeah.
I was like, what does this do? I didn't know, and my questions were so...
Well, you learned a lot, clearly, because the research that you did shows in the book, because it is quite technical in ways. When I was reading it, I felt like I was in the plane or experiencing what was happening. But then as your book begins, some of your pilots were like, maybe you don't have to name me, as if perhaps you got the information wrong.
One of the pilots, they helped me out, and I was like, I'm just going to put your name in the acknowledgements. He went, no need. Because basically I have to to do some of the things that I want to do in the plane, I have to bend the laws of physics sufficiently.
I could not tell.
But he just didn't want his big legacy airline thinking that's how he told people, that it worked. So I learned, I'm really in awe of pilots, much more than I was. And actually one of the challenges of the books was trying to write a character you could relate to with problems, who on the other hand has still been to flight school and is a pilot, it's an interesting issue to deal with.
Do you think if people knew her personal life, they'd be like, no, she can't fly, just because they want the pilot to be in control, like a robot that can't, ready for everything, but she is, but then a messy personal life made a track?
Yeah, I think what people do in their own, I worked in hospitals before I was a novelist, and very senior consultants doing very senior operations, had all sorts of governance going on. So, I think that's kind of fairly, and pilots infamously, I think.
Oh no, they have a good time.
Fairly up and down, personalised.
Up and down, it's nice.
Yeah. Actually, I was really interested, even just to learn that way that pilots talk is not really showing off. It's because legacy airlines are so big and have so many thousands of pilots that at any point you'll just be rostered in with someone you have never met, and someone will plonk down beside you from any country who speaks any language, although you'll speak English in the air. And you guys, or you people rather, I mean guys as in people, you need to be able to communicate in a way that is completely comprehensible to you at all times. So when you say, I'm going to X, Y, this, B, Z, it has to be the same line of speech that you're giving every single time, so that at no point is there colloquialism or slang or the possibility of being misunderstood.
It's never when I watch a comedy where there's two pilots who hate each other and have to communicate, but just seething hatred just bleeds through every...
I'm sure.
But take the mask to... I don't know.
Yes, but they do it. It's completely the law. And interestingly, talking to people that had been... or to pilots who fly everywhere, and they did say Britain, from a pilot's perspective, from the sky, Britain is two places. It's London and Scotland, because that's the name of the air traffic control regions that they're in. They come out of North Germany and they come into London, and then Scotland. That's it.
It's also journalism. Nowhere exists other than London, and then everywhere outside of London.
Yes, that's right. I'm sorry if you watched the news. That wherever they go, Kinshasa, Indonesia, doesn't matter where they are, the hardest air traffic controllers in the world to understand is still Glasgow.
Really? Oh, I'm actually really proud of that.
In their first language, yes.
Well, the book's kind of like a love letter to the Highlands as well. It kind of reminded me, this is so cliche, but when they say New York is a character in Sex and the City, the Highlands very much felt like that. It was just an extra character in this book. Have you spent much time up there yourself? Is there a favourite part that you enjoy going to? I know Inchbourne, correct me if I'm wrong, is a made-up
It is,
island.
Yes.
Okay, it sounds like it could actually be one of them, but it did test me. I was like, how have I not heard of Inchbourne? And then I was like, nope, this is...
Have you heard of Inchcolm though?
Probably not. I've heard of some of them.
It's quite, there's a lot of similarities. I don't write about real places, because if you write, apart from big cities like Edinburgh that you can have a view on, but if you write about small towns that exist and you get the road wrong, it's like your local Facebook page gone mental, and they all write to you, and it's a horrible thing. And also, if you want to kind of be negative about it, it's that thing, isn't it? Like, I'm allowed to slag off the town I grew up in, and do frequently, but no one else.
Yeah, like siblings.
Yes, exactly.
Bully my siblings, but if anyone else
so that's
does.
why I always make up. But I think because obviously I grew up here, or I grew up on the West Coast, and then I lived overseas a lot. I lived in France, I lived in the US, I lived in the Netherlands, I lived in England. And then I came back, so I'd been away for 20 years, and it was really interesting. Scotland had changed so much in that time. There'd been devolution, so the political landscape had changed, the culture had changed, the food had changed. It was just a much more confident and interesting country than when I'd left, but also I got the chance to see it through different eyes, and that was interesting. And funnily enough, you've probably found something like this. When I was growing up in a small town, I was like, oh God, this is awful. Everybody knows who I am, what I'm doing. And then when I came back to live in a village with my children, it was like, this is great. Everybody knows them. Everybody knows, so things that bug you when you're wee, actually you learn to really respect community, and it can be limiting, but it can also be wonderful. I think the more I travel in Scotland, it's hard to find a bit of it that I don't like, really. I was up at the John O'Groats Festival, and it's amazing up there. It's beautiful, but it's really teeny weeny John O'Groats. Have you been there? It's
It's
really...
like the tip of the end of the world.
It's the end of the world, but except it's not quite the end of the world because you can see Orkney, of course.
That's
you
true.
can see Orkney from John O'Groats. And everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, it's all going on in Orkney. It's basically the bright lights of Orkney. They were all complaining about how cool it was.
That's fun.
Over the thing. So I mean, everywhere I go, you know, I love Oban. You know, I love really. I was just up at Blair. Oh, where am I thinking? Where do they have that lovely big festival up? Oh, anyway. Do you know what? I can't.
This
I
isn't
got asked by.
Mastermind. It's okay.
Screw you, Stanley Johnson. But I got asked by a newspaper what was my favourite bit of Scotland, and I was down in the Borders. I was in Melrose last week. It's heaven, Melrose. It's the most glorious place. So
Yes, we're all going to Melrose now. They'll be like,
well, all I mean is I've never really found a place, a part of Scotland that I haven't found something in that's really kind of amazing.
have you been to the Gorbals?
I have. My dad lives there. And you're very near Glasgow Green, which is a very nice part of Glasgow. My daughter is on her way to Bella Houston Park tonight to see the Arctic monkeys with 50,000 other people. Is hosing it. I took her to see Harry Styles. It's her birthday, by the way. We don't constantly spoil her with gigs and stuff. I took her to see Harry Styles, which was amazing, and the weather was beautiful, and we could walk there. And her dad, bless her, has drawn the short straw, and he's going to stand. He's also deaf. My husband is deaf. He's going to stand in a big field in the hosing rain for 4 hours at Bella Houston Park, watching my daughter gently frog to the Arctic monkeys. Which is devotion in many ways. So I'm so glad to be. I mean, you know when people say they're glad to be here, and you're like, are you really? Yes.
So in terms of your writing, there's something you wrote about how pilots, when they're in the sky, they feel low. And as a writer, I think we also, when that flow hits, it's magical. Do you feel like the flow, as it were, is like a rare occurrence, or do you have a system how to kind of get yourself into that mind space where you can sit there and create what it is you want? I was intrigued. I didn't realise, I guess I'm just a very narcissistic writer, but I didn't realise that pilots and other people relied on this. Well, not relied, but experienced the kind of
I think
flow.
Flow I think is really interesting because I play the piano, and musicians certainly experience.
That's true.
But also all sorts of people, woodworkers experience it. Gosh, my husband, who's an engineer on a boat, you know, I can see him taking apart a bilge tank, and I can tell he's really into it on a certain level. Or, you know, watch someone build Lego. You know, it's such an interesting state, Flo. And you're right, I did want to write about that feeling when you're so caught up that, you know, you don't care about your phone, and you don't care, you know.
Nothing exists outside of it. You're just in that moment.
Yeah, I think it's why people like to swim in cold water, or as we used to call it, go for a swim. But you know, it's anything now, you know, that to get that concentration where all you can think about is being in the moment and what you're doing. And it's also, I think the pilot thing, because I didn't write this book in lockdown, but certainly coming out of lockdown, I hadn't been on a plane for ages, and the first time I went, I kind of thought, God, this is nuts. This is magic. We're in a box, and there's a cloud beneath us. You know, I mean, to 99.9% of human history, it's the most insane thing to do.
Getting back on a plane after lockdown gave me the creeps because you somehow had more time to think about it, or
you're like this
just
weird.
like,
or it's just, everything was weird.
It was weird. I feel like though your books, a lot of people like it's just as well you've written so many books so that people could actually just kind of go through them in that time where time actually just lost all meaning. Because I know I certainly read a few of the series that you had, the bookshop series and things like that, and it just brought a lot of comfort because I don't know, rom-coms are just so special, and it's straight. What bugs me is that because it's a female-dominated genre, people look down on it as if kicking a ball back and forth is somehow more sophisticated. But rom-coms just bring so much comfort to people, whether you're reading them or whether you're watching them. Is that, do they bring you, like, as the person who's behind the curtain, do you still get a kick out of watching and reading them yourself?
Oh God, yeah. Oh, of course. I just love that real security. Okay, at some point there's going to be kissing. How are we going to get there? You know, it's just I kind of really realize it. Also, I'm terrible for watching the same over and over and over again. I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen Sleepless in Seattle. I couldn't tell you. I've watched it. If it's on, I will watch it. It's an infinite number of times. And I still, at the bit at the end where she gets in the lift, I'm like, oh my God, she's not going to make it. She's not going to make it. You know, I absolutely love, I love the genre. And actually one of the nice things that did happen during lockdown, and it's kind of interesting as a writer really, was because my books are quite easy to read. And again, you know, nothing terribly startling is going to happen. Stuff is going to happen, but, you know, hopefully it won't upset you too much. And so a lot of people did say, yeah, we kind of, you know, stacked your books up, or we held on to them, or we got into them. And I was the same at the beginning of lockdown when we were all scared. I was reading things like What Katie Did, you know. And so that was kind of quite... But it's funny because my agent said, well, you know, why don't you try something really different next year? And all I could think about was people that I meet at readings, you know, or signings in Iceland or in the Netherlands or in Germany that go, oh, you know, I was going through this and I didn't need to deal with it for half an hour a day because I could come home and read one of your books. And actually when my mother died, and it was very difficult, and I would go into my own books when I was working, and it was just a nice... I wasn't reading them, I should say, but you know, when I was working, it was just a nice place to go. So I do feel that that is an important part of life, and I do feel that it's important to acknowledge that books and reading do all sorts of things for us, you know? Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily have to be continually challenging your inner intellectual discourse.
They're not there to cure everything.
The world of books is a world full of doors and windows and mirrors, you know, as part of the human experience.
This is like asking you to pick your favourite children, but do you have a favourite character of yours?
I have a real fondness for Saif in the Muir series, who started out very peripheral, just turned up just because it was interesting. And by the end of the series, him and Lorna are really the main characters of that series. Their story was so interesting to me as I was writing it, and they constantly, they're the ones that people ask me about all the time. So them, the most embarrassing one, does anybody read the class series, the school series? Because that has happened over such a huge space of time, because we stopped doing it. So in about 2008, I wrote a book set in a boarding school. It was a bit like Mallory Towers, but it was for young adults, but also for adults. So it follows the kids, but it also follows the teachers. And we wrote a couple, and they didn't do terribly well, so we kind of parked it. But we'd left it on a cliffhanger, and so it hadn't sold loads, but the ones that had sold, we just kept hearing from people, and every year it got slightly worse. Things like, I'm going in for an operation, would you mind telling me what happened? Or, you know, we did it under a pseudonym. It's like, I've been checking the obituaries. Is this writer dead? You know, and it just got kind of complete. But the problem was, so we picked it up again in about 2015, and we did another couple. We've got one coming this year, and we're going to finish. We're going to do all 6. We are going to finish. The problem is the difference, because I'm following teenage girls, the difference between being, 2 things. The difference between being a teenage girl in 2008 and 2015 is ridiculous. It's insane. The 2008 book reads like it was written in 1934. It's just the difference in their world and their reflection. So that was kind of scary. That was one thing. Secondly, like everybody else that wrote a book in 2008, when you're writing rom-com, you tend to pick, I'm straight, so you tend to pick as your romantic hero or heroine somebody that you fancy that's on TV at the time. So every single rom-com that came out in 2008, the romantic hero looks a lot like David Tennant playing Doctor Who. And that was very awkward, because that was my 2008 book, whereupon I spent the next 6 years working with him. And actually, one of the reasons we held on to Ailey Beaton is at one point someone says, do you know, I think Georgia Moffat would do a really good job on your audiobooks. Who's married to him? Wow. So that was a bit awkward too. But the third and final thing about the class books was names are always a problem with writers, because you get through a lot and you have to kind of pluck them out of the air and try and make them suit the characters. and I wanted, there's a scholarship girl, and I wanted her to be from Eastern Europe, but not notably a place that you could point your finger
Princess
on.
Diaries
It's
style.
there. Or kind of, anyway, basically, I picked an old lawyer's name from a court case that I'd read about years ago. Nobody ever mentions the fact that she's called Simone Kardashian.
No.
Because it's pre the
I
Kardashians.
didn't realise that.
So that's the only thing we came
Oh my
back
God, we
and-
blame you for the Kardashians.
It's
Oh,
probably,
you manifested it.
then I just thought it was a pretty name. And then when we came back in 2015, we didn't, or 2017, or whenever we came back, we didn't change anything else, but we did change Simone's name.
Kris
Because
Jenner.
otherwise, she'd just spend her whole life with people making stupid jokes about the stupid Kardashians.
Oh, jeez, I didn't know. It's a fun fact to have. Do you have, as someone who kind of dabbles in the rom-com genre, but more for TV and stuff, I'm obsessed with like rom-com tropes and meet cutes and things. And there's also tropes are there for a reason. There's some that I hate,
Okay.
and there's some that I just love. Do you have like a favourite one that you, whenever you watch it, you're just 100% bought in?
Do you know the weird thing now is my eldest is 18 and I've been married for 20 years and I have never been on internet dating sites. My dad's been on an internet dating site. I have never been on an internet dating site.
You're not missing anything.
I apparently this
Absolutely.
is the case. However, my kids my son tells me that actually it's considered slightly creepy to hit on someone in real life now because why wouldn't you meet them through an app? And that is really, I get it, kind of, but it was always difficult for people to go up to other people in bars. And now it's like impossible, like police record hard. So that trope of meeting someone somehow in a way that's not online is something that I have always stuck to. I always refer to people in the apps, but I won't get it right. And I know people do meet and live happily ever after on them, but I don't know how it's done. So that's a kind of bumpy intro. The other trope I have a real soft spot for, and I can't help it. Everyone's got their thing. Is I have and also, do you know what I wrote, because I wrote for Doctor Who for a while and they do that there all the time, hurt comfort comes up all the time. And you see it all the time. Somebody breaks their leg, somebody falls down a hill, somebody needs looking after, oh no, you got to get really close, oh no, they're crying, oh, you know. So that one, you know, kind of a physical problem of
Gives them an
some kind.
excuse, no police record, everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
I'm going to look after you.
Yeah.
I don't.
That was very misery the way you said that. I'm going to look after you.
Well, exactly. You know, you got to be careful. But as far as tropes go, that's one that I always like.
So other than Sleepless in Seattle, what other kind of rom-coms, if they're on, you have to watch, or you put on? Is it just Nora Ephron?
Oh, Nora, obviously, although there's a lot of interior design with Nora. I have a terrible soft spot, and it's probably something really weird kink now, but Splash I always loved. I always loved it. It's so beautiful, and it's just like, yeah, I will give it all up for you. And, you know, everything. I like that. I've never been able to watch The English Patient again, because I can't even say the words, The English Patient, without getting slapped. I cried so hard at that film, right? But I know I saw it with a girlfriend, and we went out for dinner. We cried all the way through dinner, and then I saw her the following week, and we cried again. I'm not allowed to watch that film. But do you know what I go back to when I just need a bit of rainy day stuff? And here's the funny thing: this got a lot of diss when it won the Oscar, and people were really bollocksy about it. And I think if you haven't seen it for a while, you would be surprised. It totally deserved its Oscar. It's a wonderful film. It's Shakespeare in Love. It is funny. The people in it. Gwyneth is annoying in real life. Mm-hmm. She's sensational in this. The people in it are as beautiful. Colin Firth is cast as the ugly bad guy. That's how beautiful the people are in that film. It's incredibly witty. It's spot on about writing. It's spot on about the theatre. And at the end, it takes your heart and it just rips it in half like it doesn't give a shit. It's a great film. Oh,
well, I know I'm watching this. I haven't
have
seen
you never seen it?
No, I've seen it, but I'm just like, I can't remember how heart-wrenching
And
it is, and I'm excited to find out.
Shelby Viola. Oh, it's just wonderful.
Do you have any particular tropes that you just are very over, or do you think they all have their place?
No, I don't like trippity women.
What women?
Oh, I'm so clumsy.
Oh, the Jennifer Lopez.
I don't like. I like Jennifer Lopez and pretty much anything she does. I don't like Cookie, the Cookie Girl.
Oh, the Zooey Deschanel types.
Yeah, that kind of terribly adorable. That kind of really kooky girl that men think is just adorable. Pixie, your manic pixie, your basic manic pixie dream girl is of very little interest.
It's also very 2008
to me. It is very 2008.
To bring it back to
yes,
that.
but relentlessly persistent. I find.
Men are always looking for a cookie girl to fix their life without any effort.
Oh God, we just went to. Oh, it's brilliant, by the way. But we just went to see the new animated Spider-Verse film, which is a joy. But the leading female character, she's got her buzz undercut and she's got her flicky hair, and and she's really awesome and really cool. But yes, she is also a classic pixie.
Shall we get people to ask questions who are not me? Is this a room or the?
What do you know? Oh, brilliant.
Oh, we have a
Thanks,
professional
Christina.
microphone holder taker. We have someone over here. You're very brave being the first person.
Oh, you're not. Look how nice everybody is.
I already made Christina run around the room during the earlier panel, so I feel like I need to buy her a coffee to apologise.
Get your steps up.
I thought the answer to why pilots might be because it's the only job you've not yet covered. Are there any other really interesting jobs that you want to dig into and find out more about?
I don't know about jobs, but I'm currently writing about knitting, which is interesting. To me, I think because I was raised by teachers, both my parents were teachers, so I find teachers endlessly inspiring and interesting what they do, because it's the effect a good teacher has on your life is so astonishing. So teachers are always interesting, and then I worked in hospitals, and the way hospitals work are always interesting to me. I tell you what I really loved, and I would like to have written more of, is I wrote about registrar, but it's a book called 500 Miles. We wrote it in lockdown. It came out in lockdown. It was one of these books that just kind of got lost in the kerfuffle, but I didn't end up, I think she officiates a wedding, but I think the whole gamut of what registrars do on any given day, births, weddings, deaths, that's it, that's fiction. I thought it's incredibly interesting what they do and what they see, and because they see causes of death. They see the names that come in and out, and I think they have a really good, and they do it all for like 22 grand a year, but they have a really good, I think, view of and also, the thing about registrars, it's a bit like you see everyone. It's not just this section, or it's not even like I work in a posh supermarket and you see every human being that lives in your area. So I feel that book ended up being much more about Italy and family and loss and music. That's what that book ended up being about, because you don't always control these things. But I think I made because that's what it is, she's on leave from her job. That's what happens. And actually, I wish I hadn't spunked that incredibly interesting job up the wall, because it's such an interesting thing.
Maybe the character can come back into...
She can't come back, but the job, maybe. I mean, she could come back, but it is some characters, when they've gone through a lot, to find someone nice and to get their life sorted out. I want to mess it up. She was quite often I write kind of strong, plucky women, but she wasn't. She was really fragile and really had a real issue with just kind of getting out of the house and anxiety. So no, I'm not messing up for Marissa. She's fine. Is
it a taboo against using the same occupation twice?
Let's find out. Yeah, thank you. That was a really useful and interesting question.
So you will be
yes, you absolutely will. Yeah. So, but yes, registrars see it all. I don't know how you officiate a wedding and then come back and someone comes from a hospital and says, my child's died and I've got to write it down. I don't, it's astonishing.
Do you have another question?
And also I've met a couple of but our next door neighbour was a registrar, and I've met a couple, and they are also people who love their jobs. So
I think you'd have to in that
I think if you like people, then, you know.
It's hard,
But interesting.
very interesting. We'll find out in your next book.
Hi, so it's been a minute since I did. 500 Miles was your first book that I read, and it got me to read most, if not all, of the rest of them. But you were saying earlier about being hesitant to write like dating app stuff. If I'm not mistaken, in that book there was lots of email exchange.
Yes.
Okay, it's been a minute since I read it. But I just want to say that was done brilliantly, because that's usually not something I like, is the whole, I'm sorry, but Sleepless in Seattle is not one of my favorite movies. And it's for that very reason. But I liked it in 500 Miles so much, just that like I kept reading the other books and the other series and everything. So not a question, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Your book is better than Sleepless in Seattle.
It was very much, sometimes I have a kind of bit, the whole point about 500 Miles, by the way, is it's two people that don't meet until very, very, very late in the book. And that's the only thing. But sometimes I do like to write to a thing. Or if you've read Bookshop on the Shore, which is, that's basically The Sound of Music, but with like books. You know, you just, you know, because it's about a woman who ends up having to go and look after a whole bunch of strange children. So you do get a kind of theme going on. But it's two healthcare workers that are on job. They're looking after each other's jobs. And so they're only allowed to communicate about clinical issues, and they're not allowed to email. They're not allowed to private email. They've got to use the public server. And you can see how this is going. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Oh, yeah, we got one in.
So I suffer fear of flying, but if I read The Summer Skies, will it cure me of it? Or will it make it worse?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Well, the character in the book does, the pilot does. And it's about her, because she's in a near miss. That's the opening of the book. And then she has to kind of find her courage back again. How bad is it? Can you get on a plane if you really have to?
Yeah, I do fly occasionally, but I just kind of sit there gripping the seat. And if there's turbulence,
Are you keeping the plane up by holding on?
Well, if there's any turbulence at all, I'm like, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. So it's like, I would always try and avoid it.
Everything ends well. So yes, I think so. But there is something about a plane crash, isn't there, that's so scary and so kind of, you know, final. Oh gosh, let me tell you, I was up at, where was I? St Andrews. And the person that was moderating had been the head of BBC Radio, so she was very impressive, quite frightening. And she said, well, I want you to read this bit. And that isn't normally, quite often I'll read a bit, but you choose your own bit, you know. And then you read it out and you have to make lots of changes for stuff that you would not have perhaps written otherwise. And she said, read this bit. And the bit she'd asked me to read is the opening, which is full of air traffic control speak. And the thing is, of course, I didn't write that. There's a policy for it. You know, what they say and what the pilot says back to them is the law. You know, it's written down. So basically, it's not only did I have to read a bit that I didn't want to read and I hadn't picked, they weren't my words.
Basically, it was an educational seminar for people who might want to be pilots.
Yes, yeah. Speedboard 427, you know, the 3060. Yes, it was very odd. Yeah, I don't know. I tell you what though, I'm really scared of snakes, like really scared of snakes. Like if Viper is the answer in a crossword, I won't fill it in. That's how bad I am. Scarves, I don't like hoses, you know, everything snake related is a problem for me. And I do quite, as long as it's not an illustrated book, I do quite like reading books about snakes because I'm so scared of them. It's a kind of frisson. Jesus Christ. No, I am incredibly, I went to see a hypnotherapist about it. And I walked in and it was one of these places where they have like Chinese medicine in jars. And the first thing I did was to check in case there was like a pickle. Yes.
Oh no.
There wasn't, I know.
So, I always love to know if your life was a rom-com, which actress would you like to play?
Oh, I know which actress. Whoever plays Miss Hooley in frickin' Balamory.
Oh really?
Yes. But by all accounts, if you've seen Balamory and you know who Miss Hooley is, then
I've
they
seen
look
Balamory,
very
but
similar.
it's been a while.
Hang on. Does that help?
Okay, well then that's sorted. Did we have any other questions? Oh, here. Yeah, you can have as many as you
Can
want.
everyone hear me? Sorry, with more ask, I don't know. Have you got any books that you decided not to send to the publisher? Like, have you written anything before?
We have. I wrote a book where one person died at the end, and I did send it to my agent, and she went, "Nah." She had not let. And we're not. Don't send it to your. I've got an American agent as well as a British. We're not sending it to the Americans.
They can't handle
We're
it.
never mentioning it again. Salt the air, go away, right? Sort it out. So this stuff, and then the beginning of my career, I was kind of lucky, but then just kind of it was the 90s. It was London, and Bridget Jones had just happened. And Bridget, if you weren't there, I cannot overstress how important Bridget Jones was to my generation of women, because before her it was, and there's nothing wrong with Mills and Boon romance and historicals, and there's nothing wrong with very rich kind of Jackie Collins romance, but that was it, that was all there was. And then Helen Fielding came along. She was so funny, so brilliant, so relatable, blew a hole in the hole, apart from thinking like 8 stone is fat, but apart from that, just really blew a hole in the whole thing. It was brilliant, and suddenly publishers were looking for something like that, so I was in the right place at the right time. So from that perspective, it went quite smoothly. But yeah, all the time, you pitch stuff and you get turned down all the time.
Just off that question, in the book, I'm just listening along, and then all of a sudden there's I wouldn't say a dark moment, but a very sad, heartfelt moment, and I was surprised by just how sad it turned out to be. So, do you like to kind of often put in like trying to make people cry as much as they laugh?
No, but I mean, I don't feel. I know I'm writing a kind of certainly slightly idealised view of Scotland, but then versus kind of crime people who are writing a terribly miserably what's the word for that? I don't know. View of Scotland where it's all heroin and babies and dead folk. So I feel I'm just kind of balancing the scales. But also, I write about mental illness. I write about refugees. I write about loss and just the normal patterns of life all the time.
Gregor's backstory really tugged at my heartstrings a little bit more than I was expecting to, I guess because I didn't see it coming. So it's like, again, don't want to.
Was it too much?
No, not too much, but it was also nice because I think it was from a different perspective than we're perhaps used to seeing. And again, I'm being very vague because when you read the book, I don't want to ruin it for you. You said you had 2 questions.
I did, and you might have answered it a little bit with
Oh.
the Helen Fielding thing, but it was like, what kind of did give you that push to start the writing?
Well, yeah, it really was. And I'd gone to London, but when I was here, I was a student here, and I'd always worked at the Edinburgh Festival, and I'd worked at the Gilded Balloon all the time, and I worked at the Traverse, and I just loved comedians and comedy in the 90s as well. They were, proper rock stars, and that was massive. So it was comedy I was interested in. And I tried, and then I tried stand-up, and I sucked like horror. It's pretty horrible now. It's really horrible then. And that wasn't going to work. I wasn't a performer. And what else? I tried sketch writing, so I kept failing. I kept running into the wall with all of these things. Although the one thing that drives me nuts now is that although I kept failing and running into the wall, I had an admin job for a health foundation and I could afford to live in London. I don't know how anybody affords to live anywhere.
It sounds like a myth. Like when I lived in London, I was just like, how are we doing this? And it just gets worse and worse and worse.
It's in 1997, 96, 97, I was the most junior processing expenses claims for doctors, right? Which meant I was in 25 grand, which I think is what they pay now. Anyway, that's a side thing, but I don't know how it's done. I got to go home at 5 o'clock to my Zone 1 apartment.
Oh my God.
And then with my spare money, go out to comedy clubs in the evening, which I would do, and hang out with different people and so on. And you could do that now, and I don't know how you do it now. Anyway, so basically, to cut a long story short, I'm a cartoonist. I want to be a cartoonist. I got no, as everybody does. And then when it came to the novel, I got a yes like that. Like I got about half a dozen yeses because my timing was bang on. And it was just, And then once you can prize, and I hadn't come from a publishing background or anything like that, I didn't know anyone. Then that's where it starts. Once I prized that door open, at just a tiny bit, once I got through, they were not going to move. They were not going to shift me.
It's the hardest part.
I was going to write more books. I was going to pitch more. Once I got in, then I was not.
That is often the hardest part, especially if you perhaps didn't go to the traditional means. Getting in, once you're in, it's still difficult, but at least you can build on that momentum.
I think for people like us who didn't have automatic ins and people going, oh, let me introduce you to so-and-so, or do you know so-and-so? For people like us that didn't have that, I think if we can get in, we're really hard to shift.
Yeah.
Whereas people who've had everything quite easy, they'll be like, oh, I'll write another book in a year or two. And we're like, no, we're writing another book tomorrow.
Because you don't know how long it's going to last.
Because you don't know, you've got no fallback.
What was that experience like of just like, no. I mean, I can relate to a little bit, but then all of a sudden there's that yes. Did you live in that fear of like, this is going to go away at any point? Or did you get to enjoy it
I was
at all?
25. So, I just thought everything was going to be brilliant forever. And I'd never need to wear a bra. Because I didn't know publishing at all. And I remember, I was always late to work. I was a terrible employee. And I remember coming down and saying, you had an office to yourself? The world is insane. Oh, mind you, now you have a massive office to yourself because no one's in the office.
Cubicle.
But I remember walking down, my phone was ringing. The book had gone out to publishers on the Friday to read over the weekend and make an offer. I had gotten an agent and that was what they were doing. And it was the Tuesday, and they had like 10 days. And it had gone out on the Friday and it was a Tuesday morning. And the phone rang about 9:20. I was meant to be in at 9. And so I was ambling up about 9:20, and I could hear it ringing, and I remember that I knew it was my phone, and I knew the only person that could conceivably be calling was Ali, my then agent, with news. I just knew it. And I remember just walking down and picking up, and sure enough, we'd had an offer from everyone.
That's amazing.
It was ridiculous.
Must be really hard to chase that high afterwards. It's like how people get into drugs. They're like, just one more hit.
Oh, yeah.
And you're just like, okay, book after book.
Well, I did. I took the call, and then I put the phone down, and then I just left the office for a day and went and rounded up everyone I could find to go to lunch.
What about your kids? Are you just your mum? Or they're just like, yeah, she writes,
The
whatever.
only thing is they were raised in France, and we moved back here about 7 years ago. And Doctor Who's not a big thing in France, and I write for the Doctor Who brand. And then they came back here. And my eldest kind of realised that.
So you were then suddenly cool because
that
they
was
got
a bit
it.
Because they always would send me all the merch, So we had a lot of Dalek shiz kind of kicking about the place, and that was really slightly cool for them. But apart from that, it's of no interest. I think I wrote children's books for a little while, and I gave it up just because I loved going into schools and talking with children, but it's really time consuming to do it. But they're very much based on my daughter. She was then drawn like she was then. And I really hope, as she gets older, she'll always have those books where that was her and that was what she was like.
Just like keep it in a little time capsule. It's really sweet.
That sounds really creepy.
No,
when you
I
put it
know.
like
But
that. Yeah.
Apparently they grow up so fast.
She's 14, so she's incapable of appreciating that now, but I would imagine one day
yeah,
she
in
will
the
like
future.
that.
Sorry, I asked more questions than I meant to. Anyone else have any more questions?
So for me as a mother, a couple of your stories that I really connect to the most are the bookshop on the shore, as well as Lorna's story of stepping into Saif's children's lives. And I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about what informed your writing as far as the dynamics of blended family and what the experience and what that looks like.
I do have. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to answer your question without being too personal about people who aren't here. But I do have some experience of blended families and of having a ward, so it was a little bit about that. But more. Just that it is very difficult for for children. And I think we all know it's very difficult for children to have a different parental figure in, but sometimes life just falls that way and it's hard. And I think even when people are trying their absolute best, you know, it's hard enough to get things right if you're nuclear at the best of times without having to deal with everything else. So I was interested in that, but I wanted to make it funny. And also I like writing children. I like children. In general, I enjoy the company of children. But also I find a lot of writing by adults about children really emetic. You know, it's really, I can't bear anything where, for example, children have an interest in the emotional problems of grown-ups. Because they can't. You know, it's one of my Love Actually problems is you know, the kids going, oh, you all right? They can't see, if they can see the world like that, then something has gone really wrong. Children live in a completely separate universe to us. The way they think is completely different, and I remember when my niece's grandfather, not my dad, her other grandfather died, and my sister-in-law obviously was disastrously upset, and everybody was upset, and they had loved their grandfather very, very much. And Florence just clambering up on my sister-in-law's lap and going, oh, it's so sad. And he would have wanted us to have all the biscuits. I said, it's literally that's children. That's the only, like.
If you read that study that basically said that children are essentially little sociopaths.
Yeah.
Until they get older, because they do not have anything other than a sense of self.
They can't.
And you are then filling that up with emotional awareness.
Yeah.
But they are just essentially cute sociopaths who shouldn't, like you said, have that emotional intelligence. And if they do, then that is a concern.
Yes.
Much.
So I like writing children, and I like always taking it from the perspective of this is their world. It's nothing to do with your world. They couldn't give two shits about you. It's not. They are incapable of imagining an adult world. It's just another foreign land, like Narnia or the Chocolate Factory. So I really like writing about children, and I do it a lot as a kind of bulwark against bloody sentimental stage school children that some writers do. And I hate it. It's my real pet hate of mine. Thank you for the question.
Anyone else?
Ooh, do you want to hand it back? We're getting really good at this. Don't worry, Roddy, no one's going to throw it.
Hello. Not really a question, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciate how you write LGBT plus characters and same-sex relationships into your books. I read quite a lot of romantic fiction where the main focus is on a straight couple, and a lot of times the gay best friend will come along, and you sort of hide behind your pillow because it's like stereotypes are us. So I just wanted to say how real it's nice is to have these really nice, well-rounded characters they're not just there for their sexuality, they're not just there to tick a box, and there really are these 3D characters, and it's just really nice to have that sort of representation in a genre that's not really focused on same-sex relationships. So thank you. So not a question, but praise.
Okay, thank you. That's a really nice thing to say. Thank you.
Who wants to follow that?
Oh, well, I think
We run out the clock.
that's the nicest
I
thing
know,
to
what
I've
can you
ever
say after
had.
that?
Thank you. But if there's anything you wanted to ask and didn't get a chance, I'll be out front. Just come and ask me.
Yeah. There's I will say that a really great character that I think should come back is Barbara.
Is that the goat?
The chicken.
Oh, the chicken. Oh, yeah, Francis is the goat. Francis is back. Barbara's fine.
Barbara is fine.
The goat is coming back, but yeah.
It just, I don't know if you've seen Moana, but all I could picture, is it Moana?
Oh,
I think
yeah,
it is.
they've got a chicken in that,
With
haven't
the
they?
chicken, so I was having a lot of fun imagining this chicken
There's
having
a
come from
lot
Moana.
more chickens in this book than I planned on.
It is chicken heavy, I will say.
It's really chicken heavy. Do you know, I took the kids to see Chicken Run when they were wee, and there was no one else in the cinema, and I was really busy, and I didn't have any childcare. It was the summer holidays, so I just kind of went up the back. Anyway.
Then maybe that's
Hence all the chickens.
I thought it was a great little runner just coming through, waiting for the chicken.
No.
The chicken that survived, because it turns into a murder after. No, it doesn't. It's all good.
All the chickens are fine.
Thank you, Jenny, for this lovely evening.
Thanks,
I
guys. Thank
recommend
you for coming along and supporting the festival. It's brilliant because Christina and Rachel and everyone at Lighthouse has worked so hard. So
Yeah, I already can't wait to the next one.
We're there.
Oh, these are the questions. Then when you get to like third date,
Yeah,
fourth
yeah,
date,
third date.
you're gonna have to
I
like
think third
make
date
it
has
an
connotation.
no, it should be like an erotic rom-com first.
Interesting.
I would come to that.
Yeah. Third date, it's all kicking off.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Oh yes, where are we going to sign? Oh, we'll figure it out. Right.